Well, ladies and gentlemen, our main debate with the politicians is finished. We're with a selection in the audience who want to give us their feedback on who performed well, who performed badly, where they think the politicians sit on the issues. So thank you for joining us. Anybody want to kick off? One of the first issues we tackled was really the issue of guidance on social issues, things such as gay marriage and abortion. Anybody want to give me an opinion on how they felt the parties performed in that question? And if you just wait for a second till we get a microphone to you, and then give me your response. Who wants to chip in?
Yeah, thanks very much. Well, I suppose as a young person listening to this debate and as somebody who's currently involved in student politics, I really am not surprised with the amount of young people that are continue to be disenfranchised by politics. I think far too much of the debate that I heard today personally focused on green versus orange and not nearly enough on the policy and the issues that are actually going to matter. So I think that the politicians here today need to take a long, hard look at themselves and how long into the future that they're looking for the Northern Irish economy.
Now, I think there was some reference made to the fact that the panel was all male, for starters, all middle-aged.
Yeah.
That was their choice, who they sent, and they all sent those representatives. Not saying any of them are bad, but is that also something you think visually as well, and listening to it, that reflects that there's a certain type of politician here and that you're not seeing the diversity you might like?
Yeah, certainly. I would definitely welcome a lot more diversity to be seen in our political representatives. I think that the makeup of the panel today was a really good litmus test for that, and I certainly think that, look, if you're looking to get more young women, more people of the LGBT community, or of an innumerable number of minority groups, you need to start making them more representative in politics, and politicians and the political parties really need to up their game around this.
Okay, there's a couple of contributions, just a couple of rows in front of you there. Yeah, you wanted to contribute on that idea of our panel and whether or not it was representative.
Well, it wasn't so much the fact that the panel wasn't representative. We're well used to that in Northern Ireland politics. It's no surprise at all. We're given the same story every time, that the woman didn't come forward and the parties didn't put women out. But it's the implicit sexism that was rife throughout the whole debate was absolutely appalling. To end the discussion with talking about which football team people support, we had references to women cleaning behind fridges. We had an incredibly amusing joke about a woman in a bath.
Women do support football as well.
Sorry?
Women do support football teams as well.
They do, absolutely. But the whole thing actually taken together, as a woman watching that, it looked like some sort of boys' club performance where they were heckling each other, talking over the top of each other. It was just the same usual rubbish that we get in Northern Ireland. And it's no wonder that women are disenfranchised from politics and don't come forward and don't want to sit in any of the parties that we saw there today. And what was worse was the fact that there wasn't even one female voice from the audience. I mean, there were loads of women here that presented questions, that put questions forward, and that's a really, really obvious mistake. So I think that's equally dreadful, and we do need to take somebody to account for that.
Okay, well, listen, thank you. Just before you hand the microphone back, because we do have your voice now, so thank you for that. Let me ask you to compare, if you will. We've had a debate here today with an all-male panel. There was a national debate, and a number of people remarked on the fact that 3 of the leaders there were women, and that there was a famous picture of that as well, of the women at the end of the debate giving each other a hug. It sort of seemed to signify perhaps a different style of politics, something different happening there. Do you think we're too far behind here?
We're far too far behind. I mean, the whole nature of the two debates were so different. It wasn't just the fact that women were represented, but the women were really powerfully represented in the national debates. And in Northern Ireland, we're still talking about the same thing that we've been talking about for the past 30 years. And we're even using the same cliches about it does what it says in the tin, that 1980s advertising. So we really, really are stuck in the past here. And the issues of same-sex marriage and abortion access, these are issues of equality in terms of us as part of the UK. So they're very much issues that we need to be addressing in Northern Ireland, and the unionist parties should be addressing those issues.
Thank you.
Just one point. At the East Belfast hustings, Gavin Robinson was asked about female representation in the DUP, and he said he was not for discrimination. And Naomi Long responded with positive affirmation. And I think this affirmative action needs to be taken by our Northern Irish politicians. It needs to be taken seriously. And when we see the Westminster debate on the television, the reason why those women are there is because of positive action by their parties. And we need to take that point and hit the nail on the head with it.
Here in Northern Ireland, we stepped outside of normal equality legislation in relation, say, to the recruitment in the police. Do you think there needs to be maybe a move like that in relation to female recruitment?
I'm sorry. There's no denying that we need to take similar action to get females representing females in the constituencies in Northern Ireland. And if we don't do that, we will be behind the rest of Europe.
Okay.
But we as women need to. You're not going to get rid of it. Can we do?
Well, we're making up for lost time. Yeah.
But actually, I think it's a challenge to women as well. We need to come forward. I mean, we're very opinionated. We use social media quite a bit. You can see a lot of the Twitter feed is from women or from women. So I think it's a call to action for women as well to come forward.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your contribution. Just down in the front row here, we've somebody else just wants to jump in. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Jim. Sean Macaulay here from Farmers for Action, and I totally agree with the comments from the ladies behind. We now have an agricultural minister, a lady minister. We've had two here in Northern Ireland, and I know we, from our point of view, have found them a breath of fresh air to work with at times, although they are restricted, I suppose, by what they can do by, I think, this senior over-bureaucratic, top-heavy management that we have within the civil service here now in Northern Ireland.
What do you think about the fact that you're campaigning, obviously, on a better deal for farmers? And the agricultural community is writ large across Northern Ireland. It's a huge part of our economy, and yet, have you heard it discussed during this election campaign at all?
No, and I think that it's quite easy for people to get somehow, I think, misinformed by the whole agri-food sector in Northern Ireland, because we have all this talk about agri-food and it generally concentrates on the processing and retailing ends. Farmers on the ground are now almost 90% reliant on a subsidy check for their income. All commodities, right across the board, are practically on their knees. UK figures that were published 2 years ago showed that farming families, 25%, and the figure is now higher, were below the poverty line.
Why are the politicians not debating your issues, though? Why are they not discussing them?
I think that Farmers for Action have been trying very hard to get this up the agenda. And I think there is an onus on everyone to challenge our politicians, because not only agriculture, health, we have put out a People's Prosperity Manifesto, Jim, which I give you a copy of there. I appreciate you haven't read it yet. And we have been out in local towns here, we've been in Belfast with it, asking the general public, not only the farming community, right across the board, doctors, nurses, teachers, students, and everyone is in full agreement with us that if we don't deal with this elephant in the room, and that's this administrative stranglehold that authority is putting on us, how our structures are going to come tumbling down around our heads.
And say, feel free, any of the particular topics that you've heard discussed today, how would you rate the performance of the politicians, or what do you want to say?
I found it interesting how when the politicians were discussing the lack of interest from young people in politics, not one of them mentioned the cuts that are being made to higher education. Perhaps if these were the issues that they were going to focus on, maybe we would be more interested and we would take a more sort of forward approach to politics.
Yeah, obviously a lot of support here. We're in the Ulster University. We can see what great facilities there are, and perhaps if those cuts had already come in, we wouldn't be sitting in such a good facility. But are you surprised then again across the board that we're not seeing that issue debated?
Not really, because any time any of the politicians are put in the spot about some of the issues that their parties support, they seem to just dredge back to the past and talk about the IRA, talk about flags, and they don't seem to focus on what the key issues on the ground are.
Yeah, there's a few people nodding there. Thank you. Anybody else feel that we saw a bit of that today, the reversion to kind of orange and green politics, when in fact the questions, none of them were framed in that way, but the answers tended to turn towards that?
Yeah, well, I'd like to comment on the various stances that all the parties have given about their policies on a variety of issues, but I can't, because today the entire debate has been dominated by discussion of flags and hatred of gay people, and I think we managed to get one other question aside from that. And despite holding this debate on a university, we didn't hear a thing about education when cuts are already affecting us. I've just had a £2,000 bursary eliminated for my course, so I now have to work for free for a year.
There was a little bit of an exchange, to be fair, and there wasn't a specific question on education, a little bit of an exchange because it came up when David McNary accused Stephen Farry of being the Minister of Cuts. Of course, he happens to hold the portfolio, but it's a collective executive decision. Would you like to have seen more exploration of that issue of the cuts in higher education?
I'd like to have seen any exploration of that issue, but definitely more, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else want to come in? Yep, just in front of you there. We'll take another comment and find out how did you feel about the nature of the debate?
I feel that they didn't really, any question that was really put to them, they didn't really answer it truthfully. You know, they would always put their typical political spin on it. And in particular, I was most annoyed with either the DUP, Sinn Féin, or the UUP, just their traditional, like, 30, 40-year-old mentality of the Troubles and this versus this community. And especially with Sinn Féin, in the year 2015, with Northern Ireland being part of the United Kingdom, and today they still refuse to go to Westminster to take their seats, while at the same time preaching and advocating for change for this country. But how can you make change for this country if you won't go to the very constituency that governs this land to make the changes that you want to see?
Okay, thank you. Yes, that was one of the other big discussion points, was the issue of abstention. Sinn Féin obviously doesn't take its seats at Westminster. And there was some debate as to whether or not that they'd ruled it out forever, or maybe they'd left the door open. Anybody left it with any confusion on that issue? It was Declan Kearney emphatic enough on his view as to what they were going to do on that? Yeah. You think it came across clear? You think he did I think he did say, he said no, and I think then he did say yes when I asked him if that meant never. Okay. Well, listen, thank you all very much for your contribution to our after-debate discussion. Your insight is just as valuable as the politicians'. Good luck making your choices on election day. From all of us here at Q City Beat, thank you very much indeed.